So, Trenton, let me ask you this then. What are your 3 top tips for effective remote meetings?
Yeah. Okay, so tip number 1, the most important thing to make remote meetings work is to have a clearly defined objective. And it's you write down your objective so that you're clear as the meeting host, and then you share that with everyone else. Maybe you give them the chance to feedback on that objective if other people want to get other things out of it. But you want to make it clear, this is why we're getting together, and here's where we're trying to get to. And then when you're in the meeting, if anyone kind of strays off topic, you can say, look, here's the objective. What you're saying here is that's probably a different meeting. We're going to stick with the objective today. So number 1, very, very, very clearly defined objective. Number 2 thing then is to work out, do I actually need a meeting? And often we call meetings when we don't need to have meetings. Now, generally speaking, you're going to want a meeting if the objective is for people to solve a problem. So if there's a problem that needs solving, you may need to meet to discuss it. You might need a meeting if it's likely that lots of people will have actions. So if only one person is going to have actions, you probably don't need to meet. But if lots of people do, you need a meeting. And then you'll also need to have a meeting if it's like quite a complex debate and if it's a contentious topic.
Yeah.
So number 1 thing to do is make sure you have a clearly defined objective. Number 2 is work out, do I actually need a meeting? And then number 3 thing is invite the minimum possible number of people to help achieve that objective. So if you need representation from a certain department, for example, don't invite 5 people from there. Instead, send a quick note to the leader and say, here's the meeting. I'd like one person from your department to attend to represent. Who is the best person for me to invite? P.S. I'll share the meeting notes and what we come back with everyone else in your team, but I want to keep the meeting as efficient as possible. Therefore, could you tell me the one person that you think would be best to attend? And then you can keep the number of participants to a minimum, and all other things being equal, the fewer people attend a meeting, the more effective it's going to be. People like to contribute in meetings. There's been some research about it, and it's kind of obvious. But people enjoy meetings more when they're able to contribute. And obviously, the fewer people that are there, the more you're able to contribute.
Absolutely. Brilliant. I love that. Really good advice, Trenton. Thank you so much. I want to move on to a subject that I think you may know a thing or two about. EQ, emotional intelligence, is something that has been spoken a lot. People have spoken a lot about this subject in the last sort of probably five-ish years. So what does EQ and emotional intelligence mean to you? Okay, and how do we cultivate emotional intelligence and develop our own emotional intelligence in our daily lives?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So emotional intelligence is basically about understanding yourself and understanding other people, and in particular where I'm coming from and the impact I have, and where other people are coming from. So in terms of like understanding other people, if you can understand their actual intentions. So people communicate and behave in a certain way that may or may not work for you, but 99.9% of the time people have the best of intentions. So it's looking beyond that bad communication or bad behavior, what you think is bad, is looking beyond that to people's intentions and understanding why they're behaving that way, why they're communicating that way, and where they're coming from. Now, if someone is communicating in a rude way, and a lot of people agree with you that they are, you shouldn't accept that, and it's not okay for someone to be rude to you. However, I also urge you to look beyond that and look at their intentions. You may want to talk to them about the communications that they don't work for you, but that's not your sole focus. You're also thinking about where they're coming from. So that's about understanding other people, but it's also understanding yourself. So, what motivates you, how you like to communicate, because there are 4 unique communication styles, and the way that you like to communicate will be the opposite to many of your colleagues. And you'll struggle to communicate well with each other unless you're both aware of why you communicate in that way and how you both need to adapt your communication so that you can meet in the middle a bit more. So that's understanding yourself and the impact that you have on other people. We sometimes, to some extent, we understand the impact we have on others, and to some extent we don't. And people who are quite low emotional intelligence will really not know about the impact they have on other people. They just will be, for want of a better word, clueless about it. And people who score high in emotional intelligence generally will understand their impact, and you will kind of change the way you communicate and perhaps ask questions to other people saying, did did I just offend you there? You might pick up on someone's body language, like you mentioned before, and say, okay, sorry, just the way you look like I offended you there. What? I didn't mean to. Was there something I said or did there?
Absolutely. I think, and in your experience, Trenton, do you have people who you've maybe would score low on emotional intelligence? I don't know how you would actually gauge that, but I'm thinking, I'm supposing there's tests for it or whatever. But I mean, would you have, or do you see many instances of people who are not naturally emotional intelligent or whatever, or score low on it, but then over time develop themselves and then become highly emotionally intelligent? Do you know what I mean? So is there scope for lots of improvement, or is it just something you're born with?
It's like with anything, there's natural skill and then there's the ability to learn it.
Yes.
So, like for many of us, no matter how hard we train, we're never going to be a professional athlete.
Sure.
Because you need specific skills as well as to be able the ability to train and go for it. And it's the same with emotional intelligence. Some of us are born with a higher propensity for it than others. However, everyone, like any skill, can train and practice and get to at least a reasonable level. So I do not agree with the statement that some people might make, which is, well, he or she, they just have no emotional intelligence and there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. You can work with people over time to help them improve it. If they're up for it, they have to be up for it, obviously.
Sure.
And it takes, like with any skill, it takes time and effort to learn it.
Is it important, maybe, to put this into the recruitment process to, try and find people who are emotionally intelligent? Or is it just something you get a gut feeling on, I suppose, is what I'm asking?
I would definitely screen for it. Yes, you can get a gut feel, obviously, like most things. But I would definitely include someone's emotional intelligence and their kind of people skills as part of your recruitment process. So yes, you can teach this to people, and yes, you can help people develop in these areas, but like with anything, of course, would you rather hire someone who scores highly already or someone who scores low who you'll have to train up? Pretty obvious which one you would rather recruit, all other things equal. But for me, people skills and emotional intelligence is by far and away more important than the practitioner skills. So practitioner skills, obviously important, but with practitioner skills, you work in a team surrounded by fellow practitioners, and there's so many conferences and training and events that you can go to. There's a whole infrastructure that exists that people usually do get involved in to keep going, developing your practitioner skills. There's less of an infrastructure around developing people skills and emotional intelligence. So I would always recruit someone who scores a bit more highly in this, because you're going to have to be more intentional about getting them to develop in those areas. And there was a really interesting study, a joint study by Stanford and Harvard universities. And according to their study, this is amazing, 85%, 85% massive of job success comes from well-developed people skills.